Welcome to Creating the Good with AARP Illinois, a show with inspiring people who we hope will inspire you. And now, your hosts, Bob Gallo and Rosanna Marquez.
Hi, I'm Bob Gallo, State Director of AARP Illinois, and I'm here with my co-host, Rosanna Marquez, State President of AARP Illinois. We're excited to be here with you on our new weekly radio show, Creating the Good with AARP Illinois. We'll be talking with some fascinating folks who are making a big difference in their local communities.
Today, we have two very special guests who will talk about a really inspiring program that helps those with limited mobility gain more independence and give them a boost of self-esteem.
It's called the Judd Goldman Adaptive Sailing Program, which provides on-the-water sailing classes for the physically disabled in Chicago.
Peter Goldman is a co-founder of the program, and also with us today is Patrick Leduca, who started out as a participant and is now an instructor.
So thank you both very much for being here today on Creating the Good with AARP Illinois. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's get started the show, and first with Peter Goldman, co-founder of this very special program. So Peter, you started this incredible thing with your father, who really likes sailing. Tell us about him. How did he get started in sailing in the first place?
Well, let me explain that the program was inspired by my father. When he was a teenager, at the age of 17, he contracted a very serious bone disease called osteomyelitis. And he was very ill. It's a life-threatening disease, or was a life-threatening disease in those days before penicillin and antibiotics. He lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And so he learned to, the result of the disease was that one leg was shorter than the other after many operations that he had and so forth. And he wanted to do many different sports. He had a uncle who had a sailboat, and he got into sailing with his uncle. And he sailed the rest of his life. And he became a businessman in Chicago. And at the age of 75, a day before he was going to go to Florida for the winter, he sat down with me and we discussed the idea of having a disabled sailing program because he had been so happy with sailing in spite of his disability. And so he, by the way, sailed in many Mackinac races, was considered an old goat, which is 25 or more races. And he sailed in a lot of things. I also was a very active racer and still am. And so we had seen an article about disabled sailing. And so that was our discussion was based on that. And we decided to look into it. And I started to look into disabled sailing and what we would need for a program. And a month later, my father suddenly died. And I decided to start this program with the help of my mother and my sister. We purchased 3 sailboats. He passed away in October of 1989. And 1990, 30 years ago, in June, we started our program with 3 boats.
I can see now why the program's so near and dear to your heart. How has it grown since you started with 3 boats?
Well, it it was, it's grown to quite a big program. We now have 20 boats, and we also have a junior sailing program for at-risk children, inner city kids in the Chicago lagoons. I must mention that in this discussion that I had back when my father was 75 years old at the time, we discussed the idea of having a disabled sailing program. I was saying, and he mentioned to me that he was disabled when he was a teenager, and that he had very little, he couldn't participate in other sports. And one of the few sports that he could participate in was sailing. And I never thought of my father as being disabled. And so that was interesting in itself, because he had done so many things in his life, even though he had disability.
Yeah, he was a pretty active man and obviously very accomplished. He just happened to have a disability. So, so how does the program work, and how do you adapt the experience of sailing for the different participants depending on their situations?
Well, first of all, I should explain that we have outreach in the springtime every year, where we go to different groups that physically disabled groups, and we explain our program. We have a video that clearly explains it. It's a video that's on our website, and we basically recruit new people, and they come to our open house, which is the first Saturday before Memorial Day weekend. And so that is where people come for a short sail, for instance, and we're talking about 300 to 350 people that show up at the event. And they get to see what it's all about. Now, as far as adaptations or different equipment and so forth for people with disability, these boats are there's 3 different types of boats that we have. The entry-level boat is a double-handed boat with 2 seats in the boat, one for the skipper, one for the crew. And this boat was built especially for people with disabilities. It was designed by a well-known marine architect by the name of Gary Mull, and it is our main boat that we use. To get into the boat for a person with a disability, such as a wheelchair participant, we use a transfer box, we call it. And it's very important to the success of this program, which is now, like I said, is 30 years old. Without this transfer box, it would be very difficult to really have this program. People get out of their wheelchair, get onto this box, and slide into, basically on their own, by themselves, into the boat. We have other adaptations depending on the boat that we use and so forth. So there's several special tillers, for instance. There's special seats. We have a special steering system for people that have problems steering the way that the majority of people steer.
Right. And some of these boats are used in championships, right, and regattas all over the world. Well,
what happens is that many participants learn how to sail, and then they want to go to the next level, and they have a spirit of competitiveness, and so they end up in our racing program. And
Yeah.
Patrick could probably explain more about that.
Yeah.
But we do have races locally, and we have out-of-town races.
Great. So Rosanna, over to you.
And now we'd like to welcome one of the participants in the sailing program, Patrick Laduca. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Rosanna.
So tell us how and why you first signed up for this program.
Well, I was living in the South Loop at the time, and I could see out my window a little sliver of the lake. And I noticed that every Wednesday night I would see this group of boats kind of, sailing one direction, and then they came back. And I had a couple friends who had tried the program, and I was really interested in it. For someone like myself with a disability, I was born with spina bifida. I walked on crutches for a long time, and now I use a wheelchair. I'd grown up out in the suburbs, but I'd never really interacted with Lake Michigan before. I didn't even think it was possible. So I went down to the open house at the beginning of the season in early June. And at the open house, I was able to, try out the ramps that they have there and take a ride along their accessible dock. I was able to discuss with the instructors and the coaches there the different ways of transferring on and off a boat. And it actually was pretty easy. And they encouraged me to try to be as independent as I could to get doing transfers and doing the maneuvers on the boat and things like that. One of the things that I thought was great in my first experience with the boat were the seats. There are two seats there. One is in the back of the boat, and you steer the boat from there. And the other one is in the front, and all of the lines on the boat are run to that seat so that that person can help trim the sails. So, and once you're in that seat and you have your seatbelt on, it doesn't really make a difference how much wind there is or how big the waves are. The seat kind of holds on to you, and you can just concentrate on having fun and learning how to sail. And it was a great experience. And then I signed up for a set of lessons after that.
Excellent. So what do you love about sailing? Can you describe for our listeners what it feels like to be out on the water?
Oh, of course. To me, water has a very healing property, and it's just a lot of fun to be out there. For someone like me with a mobility problem, it's fun to just be out in the middle of the lake, and you can kind of make the boat go where you want. You can feel the wind in your hair, you can feel the boat, and you can see the skyline, and it's the instructors are great, and just the feel of the boat is very calming, and the boat kind of just rides up and down the waves, and it's the boat sort of sails with the water, not like a powerboat crashing through the water. So it's very comfortable. The boats are very stable, and it's just a very freeing experience.
You make it sound quite wonderful. And so what then inspired you to become an instructor?
I had been a participant in the program for a number of years, and I had gone through some racing instructing and participated in some of their regattas as well. And I sort of felt that it was a way for me to give back to the program and to sort of bring a special perspective, as a disabled person, and an instructor. I sort of brought those two things together and was able to connect and come up with some new ideas for our participants so that they can feel safe and secure and have fun out on the lake.
Mm-hmm. And so speaking of participants, so who is the adaptive sailing program for? So for example, can someone who's visually impaired participate? How might you teach someone who's visually impaired to sail?
Okay, so that's a great question. So we see the rainbow of disabled people and mobility issues. Some people come with just a cane or a crutch, and they just need a little bit of assistance. Some people are in wheelchairs, some people are in power chairs and scooters and things like that. And some people are visually impaired. And what I found as an instructor was that the visually impaired people love to come out and sail, because a lot of what makes you good at sailing is sort of having a feel for the boat. And because they can't see, they sort of use their ears and their feeling. So, for example, the boat has a certain balance to it. And, perhaps if the boat was starting to tip a little bit too much, they could say to ease the sail out a little bit and then have the boat sail along a little bit flatter. They can also hear the sails. If the sail is flapping, then there's not enough wind in it. So maybe they need to change the direction of the boat, or maybe they need to trim their sails in a little bit. So they really enjoy being out in the middle of the lake. As they've said to me, they're like, it's great because we're not worried about running into anything because, we're in the middle of the lake and it's the instructor keeps an eye out and things like that. But they really enjoy the feeling of sailing. Yes.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. So we're going to take a short break now and look forward to continuing our conversation in just a moment. You're listening to Creating the Good with AARP Illinois. We'll be right back.
Today is your day to make a difference. AARP is here in Illinois working hard to make it an even better place to live, work, and play. You can help us too. Get involved as an AARP volunteer. Help advocate for the issues that matter in our state and community, which could improve the quality of life for yourself and the people around you. For more information on ways you can get involved in your local community, visit aarp.org/il.
And we're back. You're listening to Creating the Good with AARP Illinois. I'm Rosanna Marquez, State President of AARP Illinois, and I'm here with my co-host, Bob Gallo, State Director of AARP Illinois. We've been speaking with Peter Goldman and Patrick Laduca of the Judd Goldman Adaptive Sailing Program in Chicago, a sailing program for the physically disabled. So Patrick, back to you. Let's continue and tell me, you've competed in the Independence Cup for sailors with disabilities and in other regattas all around the country. Tell us about your racing career. Did you ever think you'd be racing competitively?
Not when I started, no. Initially, I had 6 lessons, and then when they were over, I noticed that they had learn to race classes as well. So I thought, all right, that's another chance for me to be out on the water having fun. So I got involved in those classes, and I noticed that it was a great way to learn an even greater detail about how the shape of the sails and sailing in different winds and different water conditions and things like that. And so I went out and tried racing, and in 2009 I raced in my first Independence Cup, and I had some very good races in heavy wind, which for a new person it's easy to win in a heavy wind situation, and it gave me a lot of confidence. It really raised my self-esteem. And a few years later, we got a grant from the John T. Jackson Foundation that allowed our disabled sailors the ability to travel to other disabled regattas around the country. We were able to race in Newport, Rhode Island, and in St. Petersburg, Florida. And they've had disabled regattas in those locations for a number of years. And we were happy to go and participate and see a lot of our friends out there who've come to Chicago and race in the Independence Cup. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a big confidence builder for me.
Yeah, I'll bet. Are there any moments from those regattas that stand out for you? My very first regatta here in Chicago at the Independence Cup, we were racing in Freedoms, and there was an afternoon where there was a lot of wind, and my partner Larry and I finished first. And in the sailing world, they call those bullets. We actually got 2 bullets, and then later, the next couple of days that we raced, we also finished third in a couple of races, and that really got me going and got me really interested in racing and learning about everything you can do with a boat to make it go fast. What fun. So what advice would you give to someone who's hearing this right now, but might be a little bit shy about trying this sailing thing out?
Sure. Well, I would say if they're interested, go to the website. We have a link that says getting involved. And if you fill out your information, the adaptive sailing program will stay in contact with you. Hopefully next spring, we'll have our season open and they'll send you some information about the open house. And you can also sign up for one free lesson just to try it. And they also have a financial assistance available if you need that for lessons and things like that. But I would say come down and check out the program. Come out and see that the dock is accessible. The different ways that you can transfer onto the boat are well thought out and very safe and comfortable. And there's a lot of communication between the instructor, your instructor on the boat, and yourself, so that we can figure out what's the best solution for you to get you on and off the boat and to make you feel comfortable while you're on the boat. And I think if you just try it, you're gonna love it.
That's great, Patrick. And folks listening, Patrick's story is so incredibly inspiring, not only because I'm a sailor too, but because it really proves that you can go from, being a beginner in something you've never done before in the program, to racing among the best in the country. So let me go back to Peter, and Peter, let me ask you, how do you hope this story inspires others, to do something or take something on themselves?
Well, I think Patrick's story and other stories at our program have helped to expand the program, and certainly it's almost, I would say 98% of the people in our program have never sailed before in their lives. And so come into our program without really knowing too much what they're getting into. But it's so beautiful to see the skyline and to get into sailing that they get hooked. And I'm sure with instructors like Patrick, they come back and they find sailing as a fantastic sport. So it's very rewarding whether you race or you just go sailing.
Great. Now, any advice, I'm thinking about how you shared decades ago how this program started, why it started. You had one boat, two boat, three boat, what advice would you give to someone who's just thinking of wanting to start something themselves and they have their own idea?
Well, like everything, there's a lot of hurdles in doing something like this. We started with 3 boats ourselves and didn't really know where it was going to go. We became a public foundation, and funding is extremely important in
Right.
something like this. We have been fortunate enough to have people that have supported us throughout the years. And we have a benefit every year, which is our main, our only fundraiser of the year. And so that's very important to us. And Chicago is a great city for having a program like this. We have a fantastic lakefront, and we've had some great success with the Chicago Park District with their connection with us, which has helped us with the docks and so forth. With all the support, it's very hard to have a program.
Yeah. So, knowing that, with the coronavirus pandemic going on, and so many other organizations are trying to figure out how do you stay connected to those you serve. What's going on to stay connected to the participants right now until things can get up and running again?
Well, one of the ways that we've had Zoom meetings, weekly Zoom meetings, where we discuss, led by our director of sailing, who discusses everything from racing to any other sail sets. For instance, the shape of your sails, how to sail properly, how to sail in a race properly with the right sail sets. And so we've done things like that. We have a Facebook connection. We have an active Facebook program and our website. But it's certainly difficult, and these are very difficult times for us to connect with our participants, and so it has been a challenge.
How can, obviously there's a website, but also you need to keep contributions coming in and other support. How do folks find you to stay involved or to get involved?
Well, both the Facebook and the website are keys to that. And those who would like to be participants can look at the website and see that there's a way to connect with us. And we would, through that connection, they would get an invitation for the open house in the spring. And that is one way that they could become part of the program.
Great. And so I guess we can Google Judd Goldman Adaptive Sailing and we can find the website and go from there, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. So Rosanna?
And on that note, it's time for us to go. Peter and Patrick, what a pleasure to talk to both of you. Thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing with us your wonderful program and inspiring others to create the good.
And that was Peter Goldman, co-founder of the Judd Goldman Adaptive Sailing Program, which provides sailing classes for the physically disabled to help people become more independent and boost their self-esteem.
And we were also joined by Patrick Leduca. He started out as a participant and is now a program instructor. Thank you both for being with us today and telling us about the great work that you're doing.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Creating the Good with AARP Illinois, a new show where every week we'll talk with those who are making a difference in their community.
We look forward to being with you next week.
For more information on ways you too can get involved in your local community, visit createthegood.org.
Or to learn more, visit aarp.org/il.